Hey everyone, it's Jim here. Before we get into the episode, I have a real quick announcement. For the past 3 years, we've been holding Measure Camp North America as a virtual event. If you're not familiar with Measure Camp, it's an open, free-to-attend unconference different than any other digital analytics conference you've been to. The attendees are the speakers, anyone who wants to speak can, and it's an amazing event to be part of. But as good as the virtual event was, there's just something about being in person. And coming up in 2024, we have not one, but two in-person Measure Camps in the United States. The first one is in Austin, Texas on Saturday, March 2nd. And the second one, which I'm involved with, is in New York on Saturday, April 13th. Now, because the tickets are free and space is limited, you have to act quick to secure a spot. And that's what I'm excited to tell you. If you're watching this early in the morning on December 20th, we've just released the first batch of tickets for Measure Camp New York. That's right, 9 a.m. Eastern Time, December 20th. Get them while they last. Just go to newyork.measurecamp.org. That's newyork.measurecamp.org and get your ticket today. Now, on to the show.
Simon, I see
Yes.
you're wearing a Santa hat. That means
I am. Yeah, it's
the
the 12 days of data. I'm getting really into cleaning up databases and making sure that Santa knows I'm a good boy. I'm getting in the spirit. You know, I can't believe, and we'll say this every year until the end of time, but I can't believe that.
Hey everyone, it's Jim here. Before we get into the episode, I have a real quick announcement. For the past 3 years, we've been holding Measure Camp North America as a virtual event. If you're not familiar with Measure Camp, it's an open, free-to-attend unconference different than any other digital analytics conference you've been to. The attendees are the speakers, anyone who wants to speak can, and it's an amazing event to be part of. But as good as the virtual event was, there's just something about being in person. And coming up in 2024, we have not one, but two in-person Measure Camps in the United States. The first one is in Austin, Texas on Saturday, March 2nd. And the second one, which I'm involved with, is in New York on Saturday, April 13th. Now, because the tickets are free and space is limited, you have to act quick to secure a spot. And that's what I'm excited to tell you. If you're watching this early in the morning on December 20th, we've just released the first batch of tickets for Measure Camp New York. That's right, 9 a.m. Eastern Time, December 20th. Get them while they last. Just go to newyork.measurecamp.org. That's newyork.measurecamp.org and get your ticket today. Now, on to the show.
2023 is already coming to a conclusion. Especially I think the pandemic messed with everyone's sense of time and place. It definitely did for me. This year has felt a little bit longer, but it's also felt like a bit of a return to normalcy and, seeing people in person and just a lot of amazing things have happened this year, both good and bad.
Oh yeah, we've both experienced some roller coasters. I was going to say, is this finally like a year where we can stop saying, oh, thank God this year is over? Like, I felt like 2020, 2021, even 22 was like kind of that. I feel like you said, it's kind of a return to some sense of normalcy, and it's like, okay, it's just another year now.
Yeah, I think, well, and I don't know, I chat with folks. I think there are degrees of optimism that I'm seeing out there in the world, and folks are again, they're flying places and meeting up with people, and this was the year that I got to see a lot of folks in person, and it's also the year that I now have a lot of confidence in building a new team out, which is pretty exciting. But of course, I think for me personally, one of the biggest highlights that I had was having you invite me part of this journey with you on the Measure Up podcast.
Oh, and it is so much better, more fun, more like well-rounded.
I love it.
I mean, those initial, I don't know how many episodes I did, so like just myself and a guest, and it was just daunting. And it's like, you always have to be the person who's like on and asking the questions and smart and say smart things. And now I get to just let you say all the smart things and I get to look smart by proxy. So
no, I see. I was a big fan before you asked me to join, of course. And I think every week I would listen to the episode, or every month I'd listen to the episode, and I'd send you a note afterwards and be like, that was really interesting. What about this? Or, what was it? It was, I think it was in the very first episode, I think Gabrielle was talking about the political correctness of Rob, and I'm like, what does that even mean? But I think we found that degree of shared curiosity together, and I love being along on this ride, and I think that 2024 is going to be an even more amazing year for us. And certainly I do want to thank anyone and everyone who's taken the opportunity to listen to us and given us a moment of your day, or maybe a recurring moment if you subscribe. That's amazing. But I think we had some pretty exciting numbers this year, right? We wouldn't be an analytics podcast without talking about our own analytics. So how did we do this year?
Yeah. So if the listeners haven't been able to tell so far, like, this is not a typical episode. We don't have any guests today. This is just us kind of geeking out and reviewing the year and thinking about what's happened over the past year, and specifically with the podcast. The numbers, I had no idea what to expect. So the plus side of that is that I'm pleasantly surprised. So if I would have set like really huge goals, then I might not be, happy about them, but I'm super thrilled with what we have so far.
Yeah. So I mean, my goal is always like, you put something on LinkedIn and maybe like 25 people like it, and you're like, yeah, I gotta like, there's a bunch of people out there who are engaging with my stuff. But the podcast is the next level. The reach, the engagement, it's phenomenal. But back to you, because I think you've got some cool stuff to share.
Yeah, and so much fun. Like, as data geeks like us like to look at numbers and digest things. It's interesting because with podcasting, and this was one of the fun things I wanted to get into podcasting for, or I was looking as like a side benefit to understand podcasting analytics, because it was always like a black box. I'd never known what data was there. So I was curious to see what numbers there are. And it's so what's the word? Like, it's like a century behind. Right?
Yeah.
Like when we think of like web analytics and GA4 and Snowflake and server side and this, like the type of maturity in sort of a web analytics platform is like one thing that we're used to. And then like there's podcast analytics that's like hit count. It's basically hit counters.
I was going to say, it's GeoCities.
Exactly.
Sign my guest book. Also, but it's limited. Although there are platforms like YouTube that are phenomenal and give you all kinds of amazing insights. And if you're running on there, you get this incredible lens. But when you look at Spotify, you're like, I don't know what to make of this. This is so ambiguous and tiny, and
And the data quality. So speaking of an upcoming episode that we have coming up on data quality, we'll save that for the end. When you're trying to figure out the data and merge it all together, it's nearly impossible, because like you have YouTube views, which aren't quite the same as podcast listens. But then if you pull the numbers from Spotify, they have their definition of what a listen is. It's like 60 seconds or more of someone playing it. And then Apple has their own definition, and Google Podcasts has their own definition. And then if you look at your whatever company you're hosting the podcast with, they have their number, which is like downloads, and you can't deduplicate anything. And it's just all like a bunch of different numbers. So, and to throw fun things into the mix, we switched podcast hosting providers towards the end of November. So now like we have to mesh numbers from this platform with this other platform. It's just, it's what we're used to with data quality issues. But nonetheless, I won't delay anymore. The numbers.
Although, sorry, you brought up the deduplication piece, but I'm like, are there really folks who are listening on multiple platforms? I mean, I would love it if that was the case. But I look at this and go, these are probably, fairly in their own lane.
I could see a crossover between someone listening to a podcast and then like switching over to YouTube at a certain point.
I have to watch these guys. I need to see the faces behind these voices.
Yeah, there's a
handful
sadly
disappointed. Yeah,
right. Yeah. Sorry.
Sorry, folks. Well, that's why I'm wearing a Santa hat. So if you are listening to this on audio only, you're missing out on a nifty little hat. Maybe next year we'll do Fun Hat Day for like April Fools or something. Yeah. Who knows? These are the kinds of witty, amazing ideas that I bring to the pod that Wynn was talking about earlier.
And this is what has gotten us 6,931 downloads / listens, however you want to call it. And what that means is, I don't know, is it 60 seconds of play and that's the maximum, or is the number of times the file was requested? It's something like that. So,
I mean, we know on YouTube, like the average watch time and those kind of things, which I think is a good pulse. But at the end of the day, we all know how averages work, and that number doesn't actually represent anyone. So no one actually listened for 12 minutes. It was either you listened for a minute or you listened to the whole thing, and it's just a very long tail.
Yeah, if anyone at YouTube Analytics is listening, a box and whiskers plot would be great.
Oh yes,
for
I would
those of
love
us
that. Yeah.
So yes,
let's find someone from YouTube Analytics and interview them. I would love to get into that crazy world.
Yeah. So really high numbers here. We'll kind of get through this.
Yep.
So yeah, almost 7,000 listens across YouTube, Apple, Google, Spotify. So YouTube was about 1,600 listens for a total of almost 200 hours of listen time, which just boggles me that people are watching us right now and listening to us. Maybe they're not watching. Maybe it's like on a side screen or something. I don't know. But anyway, still interesting there. Apple had 2,800 listens, 2,200 on Spotify, and a lonely 246 on Google Podcasts, which is my podcast player that I use. And unfortunately, after I think it's April of next year, they're killing it off. So
they are. I mean, it wouldn't be a Google product if it wasn't in line to be executed. So I'm still upset that Google's killing their domains product. All of my domains I've purchased through Google, and now I'm gonna have to deal with that whole situation. I finally got my own name. I finally got simonpolton.com.
Nice.
It was some guy in the UK who was a lawyer, bought it in like the 90s, and so I've just been sitting here my whole life.
Did you wait till it expired, or did you buy it from him?
I waited till he retired, and I looked up when his domain registration was happening every year, and every year I would sit on it and just wait to see is he going to renew it. And this year he didn't. So
that's
hooray, awesome. 2023, the year I sniped the domain from a guy with the same name as me.
Someone in the UK, someone in the UK is like, he's
cursing my name. Yeah, exactly. His family think he's gone nuts because he's like, Simon Polton, I'm going to come for you. But yes, no, it's been a huge year. And then, of course, though, not just the folks who have downloaded and listened, but the folks who actually have become fans and have really, taken that affinity to a level that they want to hear from us on a recurring basis. Like, that obviously means the world to us. And I'm going to do that YouTube thing, and I'm going to say, smash like and subscribe. No, I'm not going to say that. But I am going to say, look, it means the world to us when you do subscribe and when that you get that recurring note that hey, we've got a new episode, because it's hard to promote these kind of things. And what we're doing, hopefully, is a labor of love and something that you will find really interesting in all facets of analytics. But we'll get to that later. But what about subscribers? How many of those do we have?
So across platforms, again, the same four platforms, 546. 104 on YouTube, 117 on Apple, 288 on Spotify, and 37 on Google Podcasts. So this was interesting. So Spotify has 53% of our followers versus Apple's 21%.
Yeah.
But if you look at plays or listens, Apple has 41% compared to Spotify's 32%. So it's kind of flipped.
That is interesting.
Kind of, I don't know what to read from that. Like, people are more likely to follow but not listen as much on Spotify versus Apple. They're discovering us organically and listening but not following. It's interesting behavior.
Right. Yeah, I don't know enough about the Apple podcast UI to, I guess, have an informed view of if there's any UI interactions here. But I do, as an avid Spotify user, I subscribe to a lot of things, right? You just click follow. It's very, very simple. But then what I find sometimes is they don't actually bring that back up on my feed, even if I've subscribed to something, because it all depends about what I've listened to recently. And so that is a bit of a, because there's a lot of things I listen to that I haven't subscribed to that just they're the top of my feed. And then the stuff that I actually do subscribe to, I have to go down and I have to hunt it down and find these things. So yeah, but yeah. See, I think they have those on Spotify. I just, for whatever reason, I think I'm so deep into Spotify at this point that it's like organizing a photo album. It's like you've got so much stuff in there, or it's like organizing a database, perhaps. But no, I'm
going to be switching over to Spotify. I think that's what I've chosen, because I've looked at others. Well, Amazon Music has theirs, and I'm just going to go with Spotify. But
get excited for Spotify Wrapped. It's going to be a big year for you.
Speaking of Spotify Wrapped, as a podcast host on Spotify, we get our own little Spotify Wrapped that gives us information. And, total numbers of guests that we've had so far, 15, of which, Simon, you were one of the one of the best.
I was. Too kind. Carry on.
If we look at the total number of listens or number of downloads, we look at the best episode based on downloads. We're looking at It's a little bit skewed because I just looked at total downloads, which obviously the ones that were earlier on have more time to be downloaded. So No Code MMM with Gabriel Franco, the first episode that came out, also the most downloaded with 502. But I would say it also has the highest number of 30 day, 60 day, 90 day downloads. So like the first 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. So it's definitely above and beyond. I don't know what happened with that one, but people just really dug it and continue to. And it's also, according to Spotify, the most shared episode. And it was streamed 85% more than our average episode.
Well, Gabriel he's a very good voice on the topic of MMM. And also I think, the reality is some of the episodes that we've had have been fairly technical on the MMM side, where they aren't necessarily great for those folks who are really just trying to get their feet wet. But if you listen to that episode in particular, it makes MMM very accessible. He talks a lot about Robin. Obviously, we talked about the political correctness of Robin. And basically, I don't know of any more accessible MMM platform like Cassandra at this moment in time, just in terms of price point and ease of introduction. Obviously, there are lots of things to consider when choosing a platform there, but I do think that's maybe why is those factors. But we'll have to go back to the drawing board, and I think it could be really interesting to do some kind of analysis of the guests that we have on and the number of LinkedIn followers that they have relative to the engagement that we see, because that would probably be it'd be a very interesting coefficient. So
because LinkedIn is the main platform that we use to share it, so
yes,
probably some correlation there for sure. So after Gabrielle, the second most episode was with Mike Taylor, Marketing, Memetics, and Measurement with Mike Taylor, 371 downloads. Also, that was the second episode. So the first two episodes are 1 and 2. But according to our Spotify Wrapped, 38% of our streams come from the U.S., with our top countries being United States, United Kingdom, Australia, the Netherlands, and Sweden. So hello to all of our listeners out in those countries and all the other countries as well.
Yes, and if you're listening to this and you're in New Zealand, that's where I'm from. So let's go beat Australia. Let's see what we can do to knock Australia off the top. But if you're listening to Australia, thank you. We do appreciate you. But obviously, I'm here for the Kiwis. Nice. You're going down, Australia. It's right. Even though you took us, New Zealand hasn't had a great sporting year. Australia's beaten us in a lot of things. But anyway, the Netherlands and Sweden. So appreciate all those folks in Europe. And hey, maybe we'll Canada. I'm hoping that we'll see some growth in Canada. That seems like they're on our doorstep.
Feels like we should get some Canada. I mean, we've had some Canadian guests on. We have
Dana, absolutely.
So we'll
have some more next year. Absolutely.
Yeah,
lots of Canadians out there that love analytics. So,
but
anyway,
in the realm of metrics that have absolutely no meaning but are nonetheless interesting.
Yes. Sounds like 95% of the reports I see.
I know, right? So our listeners' top music genres. Remember, this is Spotify Wrapped. So Spotify knows what music you listen to and podcasts you listen to. So our listeners' top music genres are pop, rack. That would be. So the third one is rap. The second one is rock. Rock and rap, I guess, is rack.
Linkin Park, I would call them rack. So I think they fall into that. Yeah.
Pop music number 1, rock music number 2, rap is number 3. Apparently, we don't jive with country music or polka. So I'm not sure what's up with that. I figured polka would be a shoe-in for top 3.
You would think.
No.
Yeah. We gotta work on that. With the I don't know who listens to polka music.
I mean, I know Weird Al's on top of my
Weird Al.
So
yeah,
but that kind of counts. Or is that pop?
I think that's comedy pop. It would be interesting to see though how Weird Al indexes as a musician versus as a comedian. But no, that makes sense. And it was funny during the Spotify Wrap. They had some interesting statistics about people in this town have very similar listenership to you. But it was
really.
Well, I like rap and punk and hip hop, and it said that I look like people in Billings, Montana. And then someone else was like, "Well, I like country, spoken word, and political podcasts," and it says I'm Billings, Montana too. And you're like, "How does?" So that's don't play fast and loose with the data storytelling. I think it's a lesson we can all take home.
You breed mistrust in the data.
You do absolutely. Yeah,
right.
Torture enough, right?
Rounding out the metrics here, we are a top 10 podcast for 157 people, a top 5 podcast for 102 people, and we are the number 1 podcast for 18 people. I don't know what that
Oh.
means. Number one, I'm assuming it means the podcast that they listen to the most.
Yes,
So something along
maybe
those
the most, or maybe the coverage of the podcast relatively. Because like there are a lot of podcasts that are like daily that come out, but I don't listen to a lot of their episodes.
True.
But I listen to it more frequently because we only do monthly. But I guess maybe Well, thank you to our extended families for being for our number one spot on your Spotify. I know my dad listens sometimes. He has no idea about the world of data and analytics, although he was in marketing his whole life, so I'm sure he enjoys it. And so, hi, Dad.
Hey, sounds Dad.
Awesome. But no, seriously, thank you so much to all these folks. This is why we do it, right? Is to know that we are engaging this community. A lot. I don't know if many folks know the backstory, but Jim and I actually originally connected by way of Measure Camp. So Measure Camp, of course, being the global measurement unconference where there's no set agenda. They have these in-person meetings around the world, and it's a wonderful event, huge in Europe, and we wanted to bring that to the United States, and then COVID hit, and so of course with COVID hitting, was actually maybe a really great opportunity for us here because there was one in Austin, there was one in San Francisco previously. We wanted to see it more in different regions, but this was the opportunity for us to come together as a country or as a continent even. It was North America. Yeah, that's right. And so Canadians, if you're listening, we're all about supporting analytics in Canada. But that moment was something that Jim and I looked at each other with a few other folks, and we got together and we actually were on the organizing committee for those Measure Camp North America events. And that's really how this whole journey began as we intertwined our journeys, and we found that, hey, we knew a lot of similar folks, and we would just bounce analytics conversations around and just have fun with it. And we noticed, I think, at that point that, hey, we can do this. We love bringing the analytics community together. There's a shared love and enthusiasm for being curious about these things. So that's really the backstory of the pod. For anyone who is curious, it's not the backstory of the full pod, but that's the backstory of me joining the show. What is the backstory of the pod, actually? What made you want to start it?
I've always I listen to way too many podcasts. I'm a junkie.
Yes.
And so I think probably a lot of people that listen to a lot of podcasts probably have that same idea, like, oh, I should start my own. So
sure.
I've always been curious and kind of thinking about it. And my brother had a podcast for a long time. He was a creative journalism major, creative narrative nonfiction. Creative nonfiction. I'm butchering his field of expertise. But he had a podcast called
Hold on.
Podcast.
What is creative nonfiction? I thought nonfiction was real stuff.
So it's telling stories, telling true stories, but doing it from a sort of character driven and not just saying this happened and then this happened and then George Washington crossed the river and then he was whatever.
Right.
It's like telling it in more of a story.
Pretending to be one of Washington's soldiers and documenting the real events that maybe occurred during that journey, and you're like. And then we set forth onto the battlefield, and you're like, so maybe that person didn't exist, but everything around them was real.
Yeah, and I'm not the expert here, so obviously I take what I say
with Titanic. Anyway, sorry. Yeah. Back to your brother had a podcast.
He had a podcast. So that was also there. I'm like, oh, my brother had done it, and maybe I could do it too. And then so one day, fatefully, I was on LinkedIn, as one is at the end of the year, and I put a quick note out on LinkedIn. I said, hey, I'm thinking about starting a podcast. Someone please talk me out of it. And I got the opposite response, which was, kind of what I was hoping for. People saying, yeah, go do it. And so, people kind of cheered me on, and I'm like, okay. After the response I got, I kind of thought, okay, maybe I can do this. But the clincher was that my wife ended up buying me a really nice microphone for Christmas that year. So that kind of locked me in, I had to, right? So that was kind of the origin story. So I wanted to
get a nice microphone. You start a podcast. That's sort of the play.
You have to.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So, but yeah. So I guess to boil down, it sort of is the right place, right time. But we both had some really interesting years that I think we've alluded to a couple times, and maybe we can touch on that in a bit. But maybe we'll just start with a rundown of some of the highlights and lowlights of what happened in 2023? We need an echo effect. So I've been petitioning, by the way, you may have heard on some of our pods, at one point we had the, what do we have? The Captain Planet theme song. We had applause. I love soundboards. I think they are hilarious. I would like more reggae horn usage. If you too would like more of that, let us know in the comments, because I'd be all about that. And maybe we'll get that in the new year. But that's what I was hoping for. To Sam was like what are the highlights and lowlights? Lowlights. Just anyway. So what? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I like it. Yeah. Okay. God. All right.
So
let's.
2023 was a busy year. A lot of big things happening. The biggest one was probably, like, if we're talking about like things that affect everyone, not just us, but it's got to be universal, right?
Yeah. I mean, fare thee well. The platform that many of us built a career on, that many of us fell in love with analytics upon, the whole time dealing with the realities of, data is being torn away from us, but we still can hold on to this majestic beast that is universal analytics. And we knew it was coming, but we still weren't ready. We were practically ready. We weren't emotionally ready, I think, as an industry.
Well, and maybe Google knew that, because it was kind of funny when the date came.
Yes.
Right. And it was like, okay, this is like midnight
right.
of this day. There were parties. There were literally people on Zoom parties, like
I sat and watched real-time analytics, and I was like, why has it not stopped? It felt like the millennium bug.
It
was
kept
that
going.
moment. Yeah,
and
exactly.
it kept going for weeks and weeks.
Right.
And then in some cases months.
Those weeks became months, exactly. And then it was June. Oh no, it was sorry, when it was September. Data was still coming through, and I look like I know nothing, right? Like, I had all these clients that I'd been preparing, be like, you've got to be ready for this. Like, here's the cutoff. And they'd be like, we're still tracking. Like, good thing we pushed all those things out of our sprint to work on that thing for you. I'm like, thank you, Google. I appreciate all you do for me. Yeah. But we've talked about the highs and lows of that. We talked about Dana earlier. If you want to check out that episode, that I think for me was one of my personal highlights this year. I really loved that episode. I think Dana DiTomaso is a bit of a just savant, a genius in this space. So she is an excellent voice to listen to in the GA world. Yeah. But so that did happen, and then of course, that tore folks emotionally asunder, and some of those folks, like Josh Silverbaugh, I believe, you and him, or you were featured on a tribute album to Google Analytics, if I'm not mistaken. Is that true?
Yeah. So Josh and Jason Packer and a whole lot of other people were involved in. I was just a small part. I was invited, yes. and so kind of honored to be invited to do a speaking role on that album. It's sort of a rock opera, and Josh is amazingly talented.
Coming to Broadway
musically,
in 2024.
I hope so. Yeah.
I would go see that. Me and like 25 people, I imagine, would want to see that. So at least 26 at least. Oh, sure.
Of course, we'll put the link to the album in the show notes.
That's
on Spotify.
Right.
You can find it on Spotify and everywhere you find that good stuff.
High quality. I love it. No, I do actually love it. It's so nerdy. It's so niche. It combines. I got into digital marketing and analytics eventually, but I got into it because I started making websites when I was 13. And I started making websites because I was in a band. So that it was always a love of music that drew me to this field. And to see Josh combine a love of music and a love of analytics, it was pretty beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of love of okay, I just botched that segue. I didn't know. I didn't have the segue in mind. Yeah. I was going to try and wing it, and I just.
Speaking of love, can an AI fall in love? Perhaps this was the year, of course, that perhaps sentience was achieved. I don't think it was, but you read these stories, coming out of Google, like one of their top engineers is quitting because he believes that they've achieved sentience and they've surpassed the Turing test. And I think
there was the New York Times writer who had almost a salacious affair with ChatGPT.
That's right. I believe it was solicited to go on a date or I think to be taken out.
I think the ChatGPT was trying to convince him to divorce his wife.
Yeah, so that's right. Yeah. It was even more than that, wasn't it? There was one where ChatGPT was trying to convince someone to poison someone.
Oh, I missed that.
So the degrees of hallucination have been absurd. I think we're at the height of inflated expectations as it relates to LLMs at this moment in time. But I do think it was a really interesting moment, myself included, to understand exactly how LLMs actually work and to debate this idea of are we at the point of sentience. And I think Chris May is someone on LinkedIn. He's an engineer at Facebook that I've connected with many times over the years. He put it really, really well when he posted recently, and he basically framed up, the current generation of LLMs will never become sentient, primarily because of the architecture. And I chimed in with, it's kind of like humans running the 100 meters. There is a finite time that will always have to, there's no way you can ever get the 100-meter time down to 1 second, because we're just built with 2 legs and arms, and we have a minimum body weight. You can have the best shoes in the world, the best training in the world, all these things. That's the same thing with generative AI and large language models, is that you can have all these amazing training sets and do all this amazing stuff, but at the end of the day, it is just predicting what word should come next. It's not actually sentient at this moment in time. But I do think there's still, there was all this mass hysteria. Are we all going to lose our jobs? Is it going to take everything from us? And look, in some respects, yes, it is going to take some jobs and functions away. But just like every other revolution, or the industrial revolution we've seen, what it does is then it creates more jobs and more opportunities. And I've even seen some of my friends go into AI consulting, coming from an analytics background, which that's probably going to be the sexiest job of 2024, right? It's to be an AI consultant or an AI strategist. So
we just have to wait for the HBR article to come out,
yes,
claiming the sexiest
yes,
job
exactly.
of the 20th century. Yeah,
that's right. Until they say it's not true, but no, it is I think it's a very interesting time to be in the data world because of that. And when we talk about barely scratching the surface, I truly do believe we've only barely scratched the surface, in that there is a lot that we can be doing to democratize access to a lot of analysis functions, right? Even like things like forecasting, and even getting on board with predictive anomaly detection and those kind of things. Those, I think, are increasingly moving out of the world of exclusively being for an analyst and moving into the world of just highly curious business users. That bridge is still a little fragmented for folks to cross, but these are the foundations. So I think what we are seeing is, at its core, the democratization of analytics or analysis is happening through LLMs.
Yeah, and the thing that I always struggle with is, and I was, this is kind of top of mind because I was just got access to the paid version of GPT.
Hooray!
And
welcome to 2023.
Yeah, exactly.
You did it just in time.
just in the nick of time. And they have the analytics feature where you can upload a CSV file and ask it to tell you about the data and what, give me some statistics and what's happening here. And there's this issue of replicability. Is that a word?
Indeed.
Did I just
yes,
make that
it
up?
is. Well,
so
I come from a psychology background. Yeah.
It's like, okay, what if I want to, 2 weeks from now, I have a different data set and I want to get the same sort of analysis.
Yes.
And I'm sure there's probably some prompt engineer out there right now saying, well, of course, you just need to do this and that and the other thing and whatever. But as a sort of lay user, how, if you're an analyst, right? And now you have this new tool that's part of your toolbox and you have to use ChatGPT to analyze data. How can you kind of get the same answers or the same type of answers? Or is it just oh, well, here's what the ChatGPT told me, so I'm just going to plug that into a PowerPoint now, and then next week when I have to do the PowerPoint, it's going to be completely different. But hey, that's just what ChatGPT gave me. Right. So, I kind of fear sort of for the junior folks and the junior analysts on some respect in terms of how are they going to deal with that and just being able to understand not just the output, but what are the questions that you're asking and what are you trying to get after, right?
Right.
Not just taking what the machine gives you.
Absolutely. It's like the very first time I ever learned how to calculate a standard deviation, I had to do it without a calculator. And that was all because my stats professor in college was really gung-ho. Not because he didn't think we'd have calculators in our pockets. He knew we would, right? This was already in the era of the iPhone. But it was that moment of just you won't know what to look for if in the output if you don't understand how it was created to begin with. And I think that is certainly a challenge that we're going to have to reckon with. But I think there's even, I guess, the bigger, hairier issue here is just, what do you mean LLMs can be lazy? Why is that a thing? I look at that and just think but they're not human. Like what's driving this? So there's still a lot we need to figure out, and a lot of places we want to explore there. But look, one of the other big areas, and maybe this is something we talked a lot about AI and media mix modeling. I do think that agile media mix modeling, or I've always called it high velocity media mix modeling, but now I've started calling it agile. I think that seems to be the sort of commonly referred vernacular in the industry. I think perhaps this was the year that agile MMM as a I guess Webster's word of the year. It wouldn't be Webster's. It would be Gianolio's word of the year is agile MMM. Because I think that phrase is now, I'm hearing it more and more. And of course, you have been a huge driver in this, in that you have been at the center of not just this podcast, but also the MMM Hub. And now the MMM Hub community on Slack. So I'd love to hear about that. How's that going?
Yeah, that's been kind of a fun project. It was just a side project when it started off. It was just a newsletter because why not? Something to keep me busy and interested, and something to try and kind of grow a community around marketing mix modeling. I could see with all of the cookie deprecations and stuff that Apple's doing and privacy regulations, clearly things were kind of shifting in that direction. So it was just my way of kind of getting people talking about it. So yeah, I started with the newsletter, and then earlier this year started the Slack community, and that kind of took off like wildfire, and it's up to over 400 people in the Slack community now.
Wow.
So, a lot, and it's not so many it's not so much the number of people there, but the discussions that are happening,
the quality
are just mind blowing. I'm learning stuff there every single day.
Yes.
By some of the leaders in the space, the true experts of cutting edge. The authors of the open source packages and the people who are top notch, know what they're talking about, are going in there and answering questions, and it's great. It's been fun.
I mean, it's almost like having a slight barrier to entry, meaning you kind of got to know about it. It's sort of like Measure Slack in the early days, right? You kind of had to know about it, and so how would you hear about it? Well, you hear about it from someone in the industry who is active there, or who knows someone who knows someone. And I've been in Facebook groups for Robin. And the questions you get in there are just how do I do this very, very basic thing? I've never used this before. And it's the same in any Google Tag Manager group or anything like that. It's how do I track a conversion? And you're I understand people who are new to the space, they need help, they need onboarding, all those things. And that is very important. But as we think about furthering the dialogue and we think about building for that next generation, there are a lot of these more complicated and advanced conversations that need to happen. And that's exactly what we're seeing in the MMM Hub, and folks being really just leaned in and talking about how do you even go about these really advanced scenarios. So if that's something that is of interest to you, I'll be very honest, my knowledge begins and ends, I've got a very tight aperture on my depth within technical MMM knowledge, but just reading and following along and sort of absorbing the conversation by osmosis is so powerful and educational. So even if you feel like you're not at that level, this is still a great group to join and be part of it by just following along and seeing what the community is talking about. So maybe we'll throw that link in the comments. We're gonna have we're gonna have so many little presents for folks to check out in the comments today.
Yeah, and I don't want to scare anyone away from that Slack community, because my hope is that it can take everyone from I just heard about this thing called MMM, all the way through I contributed to lightweight MMM or PyMC package, open source package. So I don't want to scare away new. I want to welcome.
I agree.
New people.
I don't want to scare them away either.
Yeah.
But I want to give those advanced practitioners the idea that, by the way, there's a community here that is on your level. And because if you're anything like me and you've seen these other groups where it's all intro all the time, this has a good mix of everything. So it does meet, I think, a lot of folks at their moment of measurement maturity.
Yeah, and there are some people in there that are sort of in the intro channel. It's hey, I'm new to MMM.
Yep.
Just trying to learn from everyone. So there's a fair bit of that. So,
and if you're looking to hire folks, they've got a job channel in there. It's all go.
Yeah, absolutely.
And speaking of
jobs,
yeah, that was the big highlight and lowlight. It was the big lowlight turned into highlights in that we both faced the reality of redundancy this year. And we've both been very high performers historically in our own respective organizations. And that's actually what we're going to take a moment to do right now is we're going to get in the hot seat and we're going to talk about the realities of making lemonade and what do you do when you get laid off and how do you deal with it? Because I think a lot of folks have gone through that this year. you never think it'll happen to you. It's one of those scenarios that you think like, I'm always contributing, always doing these things, but at the end of the day, roles change, companies change, motivations in life, and all these things, they shift. And so we're never dealing with a static moment in time. There's always progress being made. And to be quite honest, I look at my own journey and I think like, I needed to, just like a baby bird falling out of the nest, I got to be pushed out of that nest. That's the only way I'm going to soar. So with that, shall we dive on in? Because I'd love to take this opportunity to interview someone who's never been interviewed on this podcast. And that is Jim. Jim, welcome to the Measure Up podcast. Hopefully you've listened to the show before, and you know what we're all about here. Okay, long time caller.
Listener, first time caller.
See, I like to go with first time listener, long time caller, because if he looks like, what? Why would you be calling? No, so. But 2023 was a wild year for you. After a decade with Bounteous, you decided to go your own way, and you started a company called Causal Analytics. I think you did an episode on it earlier this year. And for those folks who are sitting out there and you know, in similar shoes, maybe they got laid off, maybe they are just looking for a change. In the back of their mind is always, maybe I should start my own company, right? But there's always doubt and there's always fear and there's all these things. So what was the catalytic moment for you that made you think, I'm going to do this? I'm going to start my own company.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's an easy question. The catalytic moment was getting laid off.
Sure, okay.
Kind of the forcing function, the bird
to a
getting
degree,
pushed out
right?
of the nest, right?
That was the forcing function, but you can either decide to go and fly and land on another tree, or you can decide to go and plant a seed and say, I'm going to land on this tree in 10 years, but for right now, it's going to be a really tiny tree, and I'm going to build it up. But what allowed you to have that confidence, or to be confident in that moment that because you're a very hireable guy. Like you could very easily go somewhere else to some, somewhere of the bounteous standard, and very easily take a role in a leadership capacity. So what made you want to go on your own here? Capacity.
Yeah,
What made you want to?
Honestly, it was incredibly fortunate in terms of timing and other factors. So my plan was always to start my own company after I left Bounteous, and what
Sure.
that company was going to do or be was a little bit kind of fuzzy, and I was still trying to figure it out. But the idea was, my next step after Bounteous was going to be my own thing, and my timeline for that was sometime around 2026 or 27. So, if anyone's working in a company that has taken on investment equity or been, acquired, or, a lot of times there's a 5-year plan. You get investment equity, and now you have 5 years to grow and then sell, and then everyone's happy and goes on their merry way. And so I was kind of playing that game and thinking about, okay, like I have about until 26 until I have to really figure it out. So really the only thing that changed was the timing of it. It was sort of, the timing was accelerated and unexpected. So that was a little bit nerve wracking, but, I'm also incredibly fortunate, and I know not everyone has this kind of luxury. It's that I was at Bounteous for long enough that, I was able to walk away with a decent severance package. And so that kind of gave me a cushion, right? So
Sure.
It wasn't sort of okay, I don't have a job now and I have to find a way to put food on the table and pay the mortgage. I had a little bit of a buffer.
Right.
And, anyone who is looking to start their own thing, and this is sort of the lesson for me is, even if you're not looking to start your own thing, you should have 6 months in savings. And,
Absolutely. I thought the lesson was going to be you should try and get laid off. But no,
it's great if you can.
Right.
But yeah.
But if it is in the back of your mind, I agree. One of the big risk factors to a lot of folks is obviously where you are in your life, but it's, do you have the financial stability to take this risk? And it is a risk.
It's your own personal situation. Yeah. It's like, do you have a family? Do you have wife and kids, or are you single?
Right.
Do you where are you at in your life stage? There's a lot of factors that played. So I just kind of got lucky that it worked. And I was able to do this. My wife is incredibly supportive. Hi, honey. She's in the other room, and you may hear her faintly in the background.
Indeed, she'll be a guest on our next show. No, I was just saying, living with Jim. What's it like? He's constantly analyzing the number of eggs we have. Our egg to bacon rate is far too high currently. But no, so as you think about Causal. Actually, maybe folks haven't heard of Causal. They've heard of you, but what does Causal do?
So I am focusing on marketing mix modeling. Big surprise. That's kind of the core focus, but also sort of in generally speaking, marketing performance analytics, marketing measurement. So helping companies understand how their marketing is performing primarily through marketing mix modeling, but also test and learn programs. So doing randomized controlled trials or setting up experiments, or even just looking at other sort of causal inference related methods to understand what's working and what's not.
For sure. So if you're a CMO out there or a VP of marketing and you're MMM curious, Jim is probably the guy that you want to connect with to have that somewhat white glove approach to be able to talk you through how does this all work and what does the future look like. And you've been doing this now for what, 6 months? Is that right? Or maybe slightly less?
July, about 6 months, almost exactly.
Okay. Yeah. Well, how's it been going? Like, do you have clients? Are you feeling good?
Yeah, it's fun.
It's a very open-ended question.
It's been going well. It suits my ADHD type brain. I've never been formally diagnosed, but I'm probably sure I have some level of that because, it's when you start a company and you're the only person, like you got to do everything.
Sure.
And some people would like freak out at that, and I kind of enjoy it because I like switching, doing this and doing that, and learning this and learning that, like learning so many new things. Yeah. The rate of learning has just been incredible, and I just enjoy. Like most people think, accounting, like, I have to meet with my accountant. I'm like, this is awesome. I get to learn like accounting.
Absolutely.
Or meeting with my lawyer and learning about MSAs and SOWs and like legalese. I'm like, this is great.
And
like,
15-minute billable windows.
Yeah, right.
Those are always fun.
I mean, I'm sure I'll get to a point where it's like, okay, I've learned this thing now to a point where I'm okay with it. And now it's just boring and dreadful for me.
Sure.
I'm burnt out. But like for right now, everything's new and it's kind of exciting. So I'm still in that sort of phase. And just kind of taking care of everything, which has been exciting and fun.
Well, that's good. I mean, the first element, the first couple clients, they're the hardest clients for any business, right? It's why you go into a store and you see that $1 bill they have up on the wall that they'll never put in the bank because that was the dollar that they made after looking at it, going, well, I put all this investment and time and energy and resources into this thing. Let's hope it actually takes off. And I think what we're seeing is that you're having some great success. And I think, at least from what I'm hearing, folks are really excited about what you're doing. But obviously, it's not all roses, right? Like what keeps you up at night? Like what are your biggest fears about this?
Well, like when you're not working for a company and you're not getting that steady paycheck, it's on you. Everything's on you. Right? You either get some new clients or you keep your existing clients happy, or you can't pay the mortgage or go to the grocery store and get groceries. So there's that, a little bit of stress there on that. So, it's all about client acquisition is kind of the thing that keeps me up at night. Like I have clients now, I'm good right now, but it's always like, one of the things before I officially started the company, I talked to a lot of people, and you're going to have or not enough work. One of those things is always going to be true. Yep. And that's always going to be your main problem. And it really is true. It's always always in the back of your mind, like, I need that next client. So
that's, I think
so. If anyone is interested in marketing mix modeling,
yeah, absolutely. I in fact very confidently have referred Jim to a couple of folks because I know his acumen. If you've listened to this show, I think you know his acumen as well. If not, go back and listen to some of our earlier episodes, and you'll his Jim sound off on him. Maybe next year we'll do a Jim. You can be my savior in I don't know, I was going to say a shining database, but anyway, and look, it's hard, but I wanted to ask you these questions because I think it's important to be open and vulnerable, and these conversations aren't ones that we necessarily have in public. You and I have had a lot of these conversations behind closed doors, but it's hard to put yourself out there and to do these things, and I absolutely want to applaud you for that, and the fact that you're making things happen, and we're going to see what Causal becomes, and if you had a dream of where's Causal going to go, a year from now, we look back on this conversation, what do you hope you've achieved in that time?
Yeah, I mean, so I was lucky into how I kind of stumbled into this whole digital marketing and analytics space. I started my career at a company called Lunametrics, which some of our listeners may remember that name, that company. And I was employee number 5 there, and I got to see Robin Stife, the founder and owner of that company, grow it. I started in 2018. She started the company in 2000. It was either 2004 or 5. But I got to see her grow it all the way until she exited in 2017, end of 2017. I hope I'm getting those dates right. I saw that whole progression from 5 people in a tiny little office where we were next to a cement factory, where we would always hear George on the blowhorn saying, actually, some other guy yelling at George or praising George all the time. The cement factory.
Oh,
next door. We would always hear it and the window was open because we didn't have AC, so it was always really hot, and we'd hear like, "You got it, George," or he would be like completely cussing George out because George did something wrong. So early beginnings, all the way to 45 people in a nice office getting acquired by a company, and so that's I figured it's one of those things where it's simple, but it's not easy, right? It's a lot of hard work, but it's a well-trodden path. You're not inventing anything new. You're not curing cancer. You're just following the steps to make it happen and putting in the hard work and effort. So that's my goal, is to grow causal analytics as a consultancy in this space and see where it can go.
Nice. Well, and I'm sure all of our listeners and watchers and viewers are all rooting for you and hoping to see causal just really grow, but in a meaningful way, right? I think it's very easy for businesses to look at the money and all those things and the potential of we could get a buyout on those things. But I think, at least from my interactions with you, I know that you're a very genuine, down to earth guy, and that you really do care about the measurement community and the measurement landscape. And what that really means is that you are putting your heart and soul into this. And I think there are trade-offs to be made there in terms of how rapidly you grow, but also how much you seek out stability. And I think, just based on all the conversations we've had, I do think that you've got a really good mindset for stable, manageable, intelligent growth, and not just growth at all costs, growth over everything. Because at the end of the day, your legacy in business is not defined by what your paycheck is. It's defined by who you help and what you do and the impact you make in the industry. So I think you're continuing to make an impact.
Absolutely. Good. Awesome. Thank you. And now I think I get to turn the tables on you.
This is unexpected.
Welcome back to our first 2-time guest, Simon Polton.
Whoa! Hey, it's exciting to be on the show. I've been listening to your recent episodes. The new host is whatever, but you're still a great host, so I appreciate you.
Well, yeah, I mean, this has been a great opportunity to ask you some questions, kind of along the same lines as me. It's kind of scary how similar our career trajectories are.
Yeah,
and it's interesting now because they've kind of diverged, right? Whereas I was laid off and decided to start my own company, you were laid off and took a different path.
Yeah.
You were a VP of Digital Intelligence at W Promote for 8 years, and now you've moved on up to the C-suite. You're Chief Data Officer at Ignite Visibility. So, open-ended question: is it all that you thought it would be? Do you have your own private bathroom in the C-suite, or is it just behind the door there?
It is. Well, fortunately, I get to work from home. I get to work remotely, and I go down to San Diego, where the company's headquartered, every few months. But I guess you could say I have my own private bathroom, just out that door, because it's right beside my office, so it's incredibly convenient. But I think a lot is made of being part of a C-suite in an organization, but not all C-suites are created equal. And I think when I looked to join Ignite Visibility, I have a few NDAs in place with other companies, so I can't necessarily speak to the situation, but I had a few competitive offers at the time. And I had to really think critically about, what do I really want in life? Is it all about short-term capital gain and those kind of opportunities, or is it really about having degrees of autonomy that I really appreciate? Because at W Promote, VP of Digital Intelligence, I didn't get hired as the VP of Digital Intelligence. I got hired as a senior account manager on the client strategy team. So it had nothing to do with data, but I kept finding myself in data conversations and wanting to do more, and really wanted to create an analytics team in that vision of an account management team. And you can hear all about that on the episode that I did with Jim earlier this year. But that mentality, the idea that I wanted to have autonomy, I wanted to have degrees of work-life balance, and I wanted to go into an organization that was small enough that I would know everyone by their name, that I would be able to, oh, this is what this person, this is their kids' names. Those are things that I really value in life, is community, autonomy, and at the end of the day, of course, I do need to make a living and have that experience. And that is exactly what Ignite has offered me, is that ability to lead a life that is balanced. One of the things that helped convince me that I wanted to go there was the CEO, John Lincoln, on LinkedIn. He posted a series of pictures right before they gave me the offer of just him playing soccer with his kids. And he's like, I just spent 8 hours playing soccer with my kids. And I'm like, if you're the CEO and you can spend all day out there playing with your kids and being a really good dad, that's exactly the life that I want to lead. And I think that you get the best experiences in life when you align yourself with people who share a common cultural mindset and have that approach. Plus, it's a really great company that is that's growing pretty rapidly. We've got PE backing, and so I'm pretty excited about what the next 5 years have in store for us. But to answer the question, is the C-suite all it's cracked up to be? It's exactly the same. It's just a different title, and it's building. And I think if you ever let the ego of a title or anything like that get in front of you, you probably aren't a good fit for the job, right? It should always be about, how am I helping others today, and how am I going out and making a difference?
Yeah, and as far as the challenges that you thought you would face, are they are they what you thought you would face? Are they different, unexpected challenges, or are there any surprises there, or what have you seen so far?
I'd say they're different in the sense that when I built the data team at WPromote the first time around, it was still decently new in the industry. Not that data teams didn't exist in places, but it was a fairly cutting edge scenario that we were building out, and this whole idea of analysis being such a key component of paid media, like running predictive lifetime value models and those kind of things, but through the lens of paid media, that was still pretty novel. It was someone who could bridge that gap was pretty advanced. And so a lot of it was trial and error. Now a lot of what we're doing, the roadmap is pretty clearly defined in terms of what the industry expects, or what clients expect in terms of degrees of intelligence that you can be bringing to them, and solutions you can be bringing to them. The team that I have that I oversee, wonderful. They're a very small, lean team, and they've got a really good skill set. But the scope of what they're working on has always been limited by the framing of what opportunity was in front of them. And what I mean by that is really, it's focused on reporting. And so where I'm really looking to level things up is through the lens of data utilization, and the challenge right now is just getting our ducks in a row. And I think it's the nature of any smaller organization, and quite honestly, not even just small organizations, larger organizations. You can go to companies of any size and you go, oh, why is the data stored this way? Or why is this the method that we use to get this data here? And all these things that you start to look at, and it's like taking over from cooking dinner from somebody else halfway through dinner, and you're like, why are the crescent rolls in the oven already? It's we've got 35 minutes till we're serving. They're going to be cold, and it's those moments. But at the end of the day, it's also about building that stability and building that vision. And so I think what I've spent a lot of my time on is focusing on, I guess, Simon's hierarchy of analytics needs, and at the very base of that is stability and confidence in data security and data privacy. And so I spent a lot of my time focused on that, and also finding a lot more conversations I can have with folks about, have you heard the good word about MMM? And really like having all these conversations about the way that you're approaching multi-touch attribution is really not going to suit the growth needs of your business, and the opportunities to work with these different types of businesses like franchises and all these kinds of interesting business models that I've heard of course, but had seldom had experience with in the past.
Nice. And what would you say, are there specific things about your work now that bring you joy that you didn't expect, or that you thought would be enjoyable that are?
Yeah, I mean, I knew what I was getting into in the sense of the community I wanted to be part of. I love the camaraderie. I love the friendliness, the we all know each other. It does remind me of W Promote back when I joined originally. It was a very small, tight knit community. The one thing I'll say is a lot of them, because they're based in San Diego, are Padres fans, and I'm a really big LA Dodgers fan, and so that causes quite a lot of disconnect, and I've been shunned a few times. But we now have Ohtani, and I'm very excited about what the future holds in all future Dodgers Padres rivalry games.
Is that a type of sushi? I'm not familiar
it
with
is.
this.
It is. Yes.
Ohtani.
No. Shohei Ohtani, glorious individual. That would be an interesting episode to talk about the analytics of baseball contracts. I'd be so intrigued. Yeah. And sabermetrics would be so interesting too. But,
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So maybe talking a little bit. I know after you left, and then you ended up, like we said, kind of taking the other path and going with Ignite Visibility. Do you regret not starting your own company, or is it maybe too early to tell? Or how do you look back on that now and think? I mean, do you have enough distance from that, or are you still sort of like, I guess I'll find out in a few years? Or
I think the grass is always greener to some degree, and there's always a little part of me that thinks about it and thinks, yes, what if, and it would be nice. But I also, a big part of my decision making process was tied to the fact that I've got two really young kids. My son is turning 4 next week. My daughter's turning 2 in February. They are super duper young, and they're at the age where the pandemic made it was so fortunate. I got to see both my kids' first steps. I got to hear I didn't just hear. My wife didn't just tell me about it after the fact. Right? I was there. It happened. I such a part of their lives, and that is so important to me. And I think my fear with trying to go off on my own at this moment in time was really, I know myself. And I know that I will grind incredibly hard if it's just me trying to do these things, that I wasn't quite at that moment in life. We talk about how we're on similar paths here. I do think our divergence, though, in that scenario is your kids are slightly older. And so I think that it gives you a little bit more freedom to make some of those decisions, to have that flexibility, because it's I don't know, just my kids right now, every minute that I'm out of this room, they are hunting me down in whatever room I'm in, and I love it. It's great, but it's one of those things where I go, I don't know if I could have handled that burden at this moment in time. With that said, who knows what the future holds? And I think there's always a little part in the back of my head that enjoys the entrepreneurial approach. But in my heart, I'm intrapreneurial. Like, I've always done that, right? And that's exactly what I did at W Promote, and I built that team. And so there was this bigger part of my head that was not, can you go out and make it on your own, but can you do this again? Like, did you just catch the right wave and now you're like an amazing surfer? And it's like, I don't think so. I think that I made a wave and I made the most of the wave that I caught, and I can see another wave on the horizon. I'm going to catch that one, and I'm gonna run it back. And I feel like if I can do it twice, like, that is such a big moment for me to prove to myself that what I did wasn't a fluke, and that I actually am good at building data teams. I hope I am.
Yeah. It feels like, it's sort of building that confidence. It's like, this wasn't a fluke. This is, maybe I was going to go into the idea of like imposter syndrome. Like you probably have some level of like imposter syndrome. Like, first time it was the team around me. It wasn't me. And I don't know but you're proving it to yourself that you can do it again. It wasn't a fluke.
Absolutely.
But, awesome.
Yeah. I think like everyone has
is great. Like, it's the best of both worlds, right? Because you're still able to kind of be innovative and autonomous to an extent, and build your team, and
right, no, certainly to a degree. But I also think about the freedom and as you think about the growth of Causal, you can take that in any direction you want. Like, it's an open pasture in front of you. If you decide tomorrow, like, I'm going to become an MMM AI consultant, and I'm going to be the very first one, like, that's going to be my title, and that's where we're going to go with this. Like, that is incredibly interesting, and there is so much potential fruit out there in that field. And I think there's a lot of look. I think there's a period right now where a lot of folks who did get laid off are going to be starting their own things. I'm going to see a lot of innovation, and that you're going to get some waves out there that I can't even see right now, because you're just as you're operating in this way, you can pivot that much faster. Versus I'm right now having to make these sort of like 2 to 3 year bets and hoping that the industry doesn't change as much as it could in that time, because I'm building infrastructure.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's always like a double-edged sword, right? Because as an owner, I could do whatever I want, but at the same time, there's that risk of just chasing the shiny object that you
yes.
don't get known for or good at one thing and start to build on that foundation. It's, it's similar to you. I have to make a bet on this thing and then I have to commit to it. And that's scary for me. I don't like to commit to things.
Yeah.
I like to
Yep.
kind of move around, but it's I think, MMM is something that's not going away, knock on wood.
Right.
So I'm pretty sure
10 years ago,
over the next...
multi-touch attribution, not going away. Wow. Yeah. No, I agree, because it's the renaissance of MMM, right? It's this era that we're in. I imagine it's not that it could go away. It's more the accessibility. And when I think about the accessibility of certain technologies and certain functions, it is, well, how much of this is focused on needing a consultant for it, or is it focused on having a certain platform? But that we're all making bets, and I think what you've done by starting your own company is the greatest bet you can make on America, frankly, in that you're betting that America is going to be prosperous and that things are going to grow, because that's what starting your own business means, right? And look, anyone who's ever bet against America being prosperous has lost. It happens. We're always going to be successful as long as we bet on ourselves, and I think you're making a good bet.
Yeah, I mean, you when you bet on yourself, you either. Well, I don't know. You either win or lose by yourself. But I guess that's not always the case. But yeah, it's just putting yourself in control of your own destiny.
Yeah.
Not just saying, oh, someone else is going to take care of things.
Right.
Which is both
absolutely
exhilarating and slightly terrifying too. So
totally. But I'm sure you'll look back on this in a few years and think like, oh, this is amazing. And the degrees of autonomy and just life-changing elements you'll have will be profound. The space needs people like you, so it is a very good niche that you're honing in on.
Yeah, and speaking of what are you going to be doing next? So like you're here at Ignite Visibility for the next foreseeable future, probably the next 4 or 5 years at least. I'm guessing here. You haven't told me this.
Yeah.
But I imagine eventually something will happen that you'll probably move on to the next thing. What would the next thing be for you? Do you have an idea on that yet, or are you still just kind of being in the moment?
Yeah.
And
it is very early days. I look at the nature of PE cycles is as we chatted with Mark Fisk about in our recent episode. It's a 5 to 6 year cycle, and it's one that with an acquiring company, there's a good chance that they'll look at me and they'll say, we really want you to stick around. We want you to grow these things. We want to build these things out. And I think that's a decision that I'll need to make at that moment in time about where I see myself going on that journey. With that said, I love the idea of exactly what Mark was talking about when we chatted with him about going around and consulting with different organizations in a measurement capacity, or in just holistic martech and growth and data and all these elements, bringing it together and helping guide these companies toward profitability. So I would love to get into that, but also I guess just selfishly, I want to retire decently early in my life, and I still want to be attached to like the business world to some degree, but I want to start a dog rescue with my wife. Like these are the things that when I talk about like I want people to remember me for being a good member of the community, but I also want people to remember me as being a good human, and that all ultimately comes back to the impact that you leave on the world. And I think that starting a dog rescue with my wife would be something that we'd love to do. So whether it's start a rescue or do something associated with animal welfare, that would be something I'd love to get into, even though it's nothing to do with data. Maybe it is. Maybe there's something to do with data, and there's some analysis that we could do about shelter clearing rates and like essentially ways to optimize the adoption cycle. And I think there's a lot of opportunity in these worlds that you really have to love it to do it, because you're not doing it for the money. But I think if you can bring a data-driven lens to getting dogs adopted, that's a wonderful thing in life. So that's what I hope to do.
I love that. I did not know that about you. So I've learned something new. That's great.
There you go.
Well, we've gone a little bit longer on this episode than
it
we
is,
normally
yes.
do. This is a bonus treat for our listeners.
It is.
Love listening to us talk.
Yes.
But we probably should start to wrap up a little bit. Do we want to talk about what's coming up in 2024? What we think is going to be maybe some of the hot topics?
Yeah, let's give folks a preview, and then I think you said you're going to be singing the 12 Days of Christmas at the end to close it out today. But no, Jim and I have been very fortunate to get a lot of really great guests this year. But I think what we've found as we've gone through, as we've talked about different guests, and talked about the kinds of topics is really we started to go through a degree of topic classification, which has led into, because why wouldn't you as analysts, we sit there and go like, let's actually think about the schema of these topics. We started to think about really these three core areas being, there's the social component, the human interactions and team building, as we think about storytelling, project design, leadership, mentorship, project scoping. These are all important elements in the world of data. Of course, data utilization has been what we've really heavily focused on with MMM, MTA, experimental design, predictive models, and so forth. And then, of course, there's the world of data enablement as we think about data collection, technical architecture, analytics tools, GA4, visualization. All of these topics are incredibly deep. We could spend all day going down one of these holes. But what we really want to do is help build a community for well-rounded digital or marketing analysts, right? Because I don't think you can have just one core skill set and be a phenomenal data analyst. I think you really have to expose yourself to these other areas and be mindful of that. And so that's why we do have some amazing guests coming up. Jim, who do we have coming up in the next few weeks? Or next few months?
We have some good ones. So we have Chad Sanderson, who's going to be coming on to talk with us about data contracts.
That's right, which is going to be
data governance, or the
yes,
incredible world there.
Well, if you've seen him on LinkedIn as well, he talks a lot about the idea of a data contract. I'd heard the concept, but I'd never really invested time in learning about it. Now I'm reading a lot of his content going, okay, this is actually potentially something that will change the fundamentals of how data organizations work. So I think that's going to be a very, very engaging episode.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we have Joshua Dodson, who's going to be coming on, and we're going to be talking with him about marketing measurement in the higher ed space.
Yes.
So kind of thinking broadly about that. I know he's a big proponent of MMM. He's recently also started his own consultancy, speaking of a lot of flowers blooming.
Absolutely.
And we have Siobhan, I'm going to butcher the name, and now she's probably not going to come on. Siobhan Solberg.
Indeed.
Who is going to talk with us about privacy and all things related to privacy, which is going to be, one of the topic du jour of 2024, privacy, cookies going away, third-party cookies being deprecated in Chrome. Well, maybe. We'll see. So Siobhan's going to come on.
I believe 1% of cookies will be deprecated in Chrome on January 1st, is the latest news I've seen.
I saw that too. And I had a moment earlier today, like literally an hour before we started recording, where I logged on to our service here, and it popped open a little message in Chrome browser, and it said third-party cookies blocked.
Oh.
And it gave me a little bit of message window about it. And then I'm like, wait a minute. I thought this wasn't rolling out yet. How is
Stop the press, yes.
I mean, maybe I'm, beta tester or something. I don't know, but
yeah. Well, do you
it's
maybe
coming.
Edit this cookie on or something? But yes, it is coming. There's a lot of hoopla around that. Just as you're noting those privacy challenges. I mean, as we look back at this year, clean rooms are meant to break out, and I still think I'm still seeing a lot of chatter about them and discussion. But I don't know if they've. I don't know where we are in the clean room hype cycle. I don't know if we're still on the way up, but I don't know. There's a lot of talk and not much activity, at least at this moment in time. So who knows? Maybe we'll get someone on to talk about clean rooms next year. I've been recently reading about interoperable private attribution with Ben Savage is talking a lot about that. My second
favorite IPA.
Hey, indeed. I was trying to think of another acronym for IPA other than the beverage. There must be one out there, like intelligent pirate attacks. It's a new kind of cybersecurity warfare. No, but there are an array of topics and content out there that I'm just beyond excited to talk about.
Yeah, and what I'm excited for is to hear from our 546 subscribers and listeners.
Hey,
and podcasting can be sort of a lonely endeavor where it feels at times like we're just talking to a wall or to each other.
Yes, indeed.
There's not a lot of interactive back and forth with our audience, but this is the chance. We want to hear from you, our lovely listeners.
We do.
What do you want us to talk about? What topics are interesting to you that you'd like us to have some interesting guests on? What guests are there specific people that you think would be great to have on the show? And to let us know what you want to listen to, what you want to hear about, who you want us to talk to. there are a couple ways they can do that. Simon, what are the ways that they can let us know this?
Well, I believe the first way is carrier pigeon, which of course is my preferred method of communication. But if they don't have a carrier pigeon handy, of course they if they're a Spotify user, we do have that Q&A feature on there, so they're able to go and respond there. But they're also able to just connect with us on LinkedIn and Twitter. You may think that both Jim and I have dozens of people writing us every day, but that is not the truth. I may have had I think of like 3 or 4 folks who've reached out and said really like the podcast and they've been really lovely and kind about it, and look, it just makes our day, and it is, look, for every person that reaches out, there's probably 10 who maybe thought about it, and we would love to, 1, establish those relationships, but 2, just, even if this is the prompt, but anytime, reach out. We're both very active on LinkedIn and Twitter, so we would absolutely love to hear from you there. And this is something I just thought about. Haven't run it by Jim yet, so Jim will be surprised by this too. Next year we are going to get some stickers, and I think we'll send out some stickers with some pictures and some maybe we'll get some quotes on there, all kinds of fun stickers. So stay tuned for that because we would love to see our pictures on your laptop.
I'm here for the stickers and swag.
Good, excellent. Maybe we'll. I'm trying to think if there's any like absurd swag. Like, what I've always wanted is a little like a mint chocolate, but in the shape of a ruler, because it would be a measure mint. I'll be here all week, folks.
Oh, yes.
I know. I actually have looked into that, and no one will make them for me. So if you out there, if you own a chocolatier or some kind of candy making operation, and you are able to make custom candy in the shape of a ruler, I want to hear from you, and maybe we'll get those sent out to folks as well. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah, and Simon, when the chocolatiers have you down, and all of 2023 has you feeling down, what do we always do?
Well, when everything's got you down, it's time to measure up.